to Al-Shabaab.
Liz Jackska joins me. She is a former TSA agent who worked at the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport from 2016 to 2021. Liz, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Liz. I applaud you and Alpha News.
We appreciate that. I have to say, though, this sounds like something out of a spy movie. People going through security and getting on planes with suitcases filled with millions of dollars in cash. Tell us what you've actually seen as a TSA agent during the time you worked there.
Well, I've actually seen a lot of things, but the most shocking is exactly that. I saw suitcases filled with millions of dollars of cash, and the couriers were always Somali men traveling in pairs. And they got through the checkpoint. It just really absolutely blew my mind the first time you open a suitcase and you see millions of dollars of cash. And typically what would happen is a Leo or a law enforcement officer would come, check their credentials. I don't know what kind of questions they asked them, but their IDs were always documented, and probably their plane tickets as well. So there is a trail of that out there. And I would believe with all the cameras at the airport that if they started there, they could probably find each and every individual that brought money through the checkpoint.
Obviously, this seems suspicious, if not alarming, given what seems to be a pattern here. So you're talking about millions of dollars flying out of Minneapolis, and you think it happened about every week or so? Is that right?
So it certainly seemed like it happened every week. The suitcases came in, and it was always, the MO was always two Somalian men traveling in pairs. Sometimes they both had suitcases. And so the process was, as a TSA agent, we would pull the bag, and then we'd bring them to a private screening room. And we would open the suitcase and make sure that that's all it was stacks of cash. And a Leo would come and maybe question them, and for sure take a picture of their identification, and I'm assuming their plane ticket. I'm not sure. So there is a trail out there. Between that, I mean, it has to be documented somewhere, and all the cameras in the airport, I would imagine if they'd like to find all this cash, they should start at the airport.
As an American, if I try to fly with more than, I don't know, 7,500 cash, I'll be flagged. I'd be flagged. They'd bring me to a back room. And in some instances, they will literally confiscate the money until they're doing an investigation. They would think that I was doing money laundering or drug trafficking. Look, these are stories that are all over the news. They call it repatriation, something like that, where they actually, if you're in a traffic stop and you have too much money on you because you're on your way to buy a car, or you're on your way to do a transaction, they will take your money and you will literally have to wait and fight in court to get your money back. They do this at airports as well. But yet these men were traveling, and this is documented. It's not just her. We're going to watch another episode from another news article. You're allowed to fly out of the country with suitcase full of American cash. That sounds like money laundering to me. That sounds like bribery. Now, some of the earliest reports of this are all the way back to 2014. So even before Waltz, back during the Obama days, there were reports of people smuggling millions in cash on flights out of our country. And people don't understand that as immigrants, the way it works is we all work together. It's not like, well, there's some Somalis that are involved and some not. That's not how it works. When people come here from another country and there's a shared language and a shared culture, you create your own small version of your country in America. You don't listen to American laws. You don't follow American laws. You follow the laws and the rules of your home, your original home. Just like how they had Chinese police stations that they found in the US that were operating, that were enforcing Chinese laws on Chinese Americans. They were doing they were doing that. They found a police station in San Francisco. They found one in Texas. The same thing goes for the Somali community. They share a shared language. They're not here to become Americans. They're here for work. This money that is being sent back to their country is payment for the people. What they're doing is, if you have enough of one group in your jurisdiction that are your constituents, if their loyalty to you is unwavering, you can literally be the emperor, or you can stay in power indefinitely. In California, we do it with Mexicans and El Salvadorians. In Arizona, they do it with Mexicans, where they they focus on a certain country. They bring the people here. The people are indebted to you. They're not like Americans. With Americans, we can decide we don't want to vote for you because the heel on your shoe looks a little too big. And we'll make fun of you on the internet and we'll change our vote. And you're like, wait, what did I do? I was great. We're very finicky with our vote. But when you bring people that are indebted to you from another country, their handlers are going to make sure they all vote the way they're supposed to. See, people don't understand this. These illegals or the people that become naturalized, they're being paid to be here. They don't pay Americans for your vote, because Americans will take your money and vote the other way. But the Somalians won't do it. Latinos won't do it. Arabs won't do it. If you pay them and you give them temporary citizenship or whatever, they're going to do whatever you tell them to do. And there's no auditing. I don't know why people don't understand that. Illegal voting is legal. There are no consequences. There is no audit that's going to change the results of an election if it's caught that it was fraud involved. So it doesn't really matter. It's all basically legal, because there's no enforcement from the party that's going to be in charge, since, well, that's what put them in power. So understand that these people that are here in this country, they're just workers. That's why when you go to these centers, they don't really speak English, but they're being paid to be there. This is a big fraud ring being coordinated from overseas. Billions and billions of dollars have already been sucked from our country every year. It's called remittance. Every year, people from all over the world are sending money to where they're from the United States. We're not recycling the money here. They're making the money here and sending it back where they're from. It's no different with the Somali community. But they are coordinating with the government, the local government, who controls their law enforcement. And if they are given a green light, then anything goes. They're literally allowed to break our IRS tax laws and seizure laws, and they're actually able to get on airplanes with millions of dollars and fly to wherever they want to. It's completely insane, but it's happening because these people are paid to be here. They don't even want to be here. They're paid to be here. You're not paid for anything. You're an American. It's crazy. You ever notice how these other communities don't even speak to us? We don't know any of them. I don't have one Somali friend. Never have. They don't hang out with us. They don't intermingle with us because, well, they're at work. You're at life. They're at work. They're not, it's kind of like they know they're here temporarily, or they're here for a particular mission. They're not here to become an American. They don't want to join you and believe what you believe and follow your traditions. They're here because they're told to be here by somebody who, there's consequences if they break the rules. If they steal, if they go outside the rules, their law, think about it, they follow Sharia law. They're not following American law. They live in their own little communities, their little enclaves, and they're ciphering billions. And the only thing they have to do in return for that money is vote for the people in charge. Why do you think that mayor is trying to speak Somali and eat their fucking food? It's all because he needs you. He needs that whole community to keep him in power. And if you got that community, if you got one of these communities from a different country that's indebted to you, you can stay in power indefinitely. Like, for example, there's no term limit for governor in the state of Minnesota. So Tim Walz could really be an emperor just because of the Somalians. And if they need to, do their scams and fraud, and all you have to do as a governor is tell law enforcement to turn a blind eye, well, then you can get away with, then that's the exchange. In exchange for their votes and their support, you have law enforcement turn a blind eye. kind of like how the mob used to work back in Chicago in the 30s and 40s under Al Capone. Remember, they would tell people who to vote for, the Teamsters and the unions, and in exchange, law enforcement would turn a blind eye to their activities. There's nothing new under the sun. The same thing is happening with these other immigrant groups all over the country.
Because in the 5 years I was there, I believe $1 billion went through the airport.
$1 billion. As if this isn't troubling enough, Liz, it's not just money you watched leave MSP. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. There was another instance, again, a Somali man that had a carry-on luggage filled with brand new passports.
And they still let him through. And somebody said there's no evidence. We're gonna, this is a in a witness that's considered evidence, but we're gonna go to the news articles later. That's gonna give more detailed evidence.
And he was allowed to get through the checkpoint. So where he went with those passports is anybody's guess.
This is really incredible to hear. So it sounds like you're raising alarms with your colleagues. You have to wonder how many people knew about this. Where were they all back then?
That is a good question. And I don't know how my colleagues felt about it. I've been out of TSA for quite a few years. So since all this fraud came out, the connection's been made. I didn't feel good about it then, and now it certainly all makes sense.
Recently, the City Journal published an article stating that, quote, federal counterterrorism sources confirm that millions of dollars in stolen funds have been sent back to Somalia. And in talking about Al-Shabaab, a terrorist group there, they reported that a confidential source said the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer.
An official terrorist organization is their largest funder is the Minnesota taxpayer. Let that sink in. Billions in remittance being sent to terrorist organizations in other parts of the world, and there's no government oversight. That's why I always say that we're not a serious country. We were raised by Hollywood convincing us that we have an FBI. We have CIA. We have different organizations, and there's watchdog groups and everything. So then where were they at when all this was happening? Because think about it, the governor of that state is essentially the president of the state. He's over the law enforcement. And if he's in control over the people that are over law enforcement and they're instructed to do certain things like pretend you didn't see something or let certain people through, then in exchange, you stay in power because you're on my team, then you can kind of run that state like you would run a crime family. That's all this is just organized crime. Instead of Italians, these are Somalians. There is no different. There's nothing unique about this. All the same scams and same hustle. Remember when the scam last time was Head Start, where we got a bunch of schools and a bunch of kids, and you find out it's really a front for money laundering, yada, yada. It's all the same. And we're all sitting here shocked at just how massive it is, but also that it took independent journalists like myself or like Nick Shirley to make videos exposing what's happening. I'm watching the Nick Shirley videos and I'm amazed. They have signs with typos in them, and they're claiming that these are centers for education for children, but you can't spell in English properly. It's all a fake scam. And the thing is, we don't have enough employees to go around and look for the fraud and try to inspect. I mean, I'll be honest, there's more enforcement on Airbnb than there is for these centers that are swindling billions of dollars from the American taxpayers. Literally, there are people that go around and try to see if they can locate where your Airbnb is by looking at pictures and comparing it to pictures on Google Maps. And they're trying to find the exact location of your apartment so they can send you a fine. If they put a quarter of that much effort into locating who's committing all this fraud with all the fake kids and fake meals, we wouldn't even have this problem. Nick Shirley is a 23-year-old YouTuber who busted out $100 billion in fraud in 4 days. But you mean to tell me none of the law enforcement in Minnesota was competent enough to figure this out? Nobody noticed anything? I just don't believe it. I don't buy it.
Judging by what you saw for yourself during the time you were a TSA agent, do you think there's any truth to this?
Absolutely. Knowing what I know now, absolutely. There's no question in my mind that that money went to Al-Shabaab.
Al-Shabaab. So this is another one. Let's see here. They have a... Now look, this is from 7 years ago. 7 years ago. So Trump was president. This came out and nothing was done because the entire regime in charge of Minnesota, from the governor's office down, is organized crime. So nothing was ever done. But this came out 7 years ago.
5 months, we've been investigating what appears to be rampant fraud in a massive state program. A fraud suspected of costing Minnesota taxpayers as much as $100 million a year. Our reporting is based on public records and nearly a dozen government sources who have direct knowledge of what's happening. These sources have a deep fear, and there's evidence to support their concerns that some of that public money is ending up in the hands of terrorists. We begin at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, where mysterious suitcases filled with cash have become a fairly common carry-on.
That's insane. And you got to understand, there have been government officials in Minnesota that literally spoke up against this fraud that were murdered. People have been killed to cover this up and keep this money flowing. I just don't understand why our government was just so willy-nilly. I mean, when I would hear about the USAID stuff, how you could just make an invoice and turn it in and they'd pay it. They'll just send you the money. Americans have no idea this is going on, but government officials and foreigners and scammers, they knew exactly what to do. And the public, you and I, we're just none the wiser. We have no idea this is all going on behind our backs and why these people are just becoming enriched off of scamming us and how they're able to get away with it. Again, this is 7 years ago, and this is all the same jurisdiction. This is everything that Nick Shirley has already exposed. This is everything that's been going on in the news right now. That's all over social media. This is 7 years ago. It was going on back then.
It's the morning of March 15th. We're chasing a tip about a man who's leaving the country. Our sources tell us he just took a carry-on bag through security that was packed with $1 million cash. You can do that as long as you fill out one of these government forms. We're told these cloak and dagger-like scenarios now happen almost weekly at MSP International.
But the question used to be, where did the money come from? If you're going to travel with that kind of cash, you have to show a bank receipt. You'd have to show your tax records. You'd have to show the source of the money. Cash is not everywhere. $1 million, most banks don't even have $1 million in cash until in the entire branch. A lot of it is digital. So where do you come up with that type of cash? You're definitely dealing with a government agency. You're not just, and these are crisp new bills like they're just recently minted. This is not this, and again, you would have to show records of exactly where the money came from. Then they would hold on to it. They wouldn't just let you fly with it. This is crazy.
Money is usually headed to the Middle East, Dubai, and points beyond. Our sources say last year alone, more than $100 million cash left MSP in carry-on luggage.
What we were interested in is where it was going.
The national go-to expert on what's behind these mysterious money transfers is Glenn Kearns. He's a former Seattle police detective who spent 15 years on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force until his retirement.
It's an outright crime. It's unbelievable.
Kearns tracked millions of dollars in cash that was leaving on flights from Seattle. It was coming from hawalas, businesses used to courier money to countries that have no official banking system. Some immigrant communities rely on hawalas to send funds to help impoverished relatives back home. Kearns discovered some of the money was being funneled to a hawala in a region of Somalia that's controlled by the Al-Shabaab terrorist group.
So I talked to a couple sources and who had lived in that region, and I said, if money is going to this hawala, do you think it's going to Al-Shabaab? And he said, oh, definitely. That area is controlled by Al-Shabaab, and they control the hawala there.
He says when the money arrives, whether it was intended for legitimate purposes or not, Al-Shabaab or other groups demand a cut. As Kearns dug deeper, he found that some of the individuals who were sending out tens of thousands of dollars worth of remittance.
You see that? Remittance. Remittance is when okay, for example, when my family came here, my uncle in his career was able to send money back to Cuba. We call that remittance. He wasn't worried about recycling money in the United States into the community, local stores. No, they want to extract it and send it back to where they're from. They don't want to repatriate themselves. They're just pretending that they want to live in the United States and be an American. And because you're very liberal and you're very gullible and you're very, I wouldn't even say you're kind-hearted. You're just a virtue signaler. You want people to think you're a good person because you're probably really evil on the inside. So you try to do a bunch of nice stuff and you'll believe anything somebody says. But for the most part, people are just siphoning money. They're taking from here and they're sending to build up somewhere else because eventually they hope to go back to where they're from. They don't really want to be here. They don't like you. They don't like your language. They don't like your religion. They don't like your music. But we allow them to come here and spit on us, steal from us. We allow it because we're not serious. We're too busy having gender wars and other nonsense. We're not even taking care of our own borders or shoring up our own system. It's 2025, about to be 2026 in a few days. And the only person literally spearheading all of this is Trump. He's one man, but we're expecting him to put his finger in every hole of a ship that's just Swiss cheese with bullet holes. But he's supposed to stop all these leaks. There's people calling from Ohio. There's people calling from Wisconsin. There's people calling from Arizona to say, hey, we have fraud here too. Georgia, we have rampant immigration fraud. It's like, don't these states have their own law enforcement and investigative agencies? Why do you need the federal government to come into your state? Because each state is run like a cabal of organized crime. And they need the Fed to come over them, who's above them, to remove these people. But I don't even know how. I don't know if Trump's going to have the balls it's going to take to remove Tim Walz. Is Kash Patel going to send armed agents in to fight? Because you got to think about it. This is organized crime. If you go to arrest their leader, there's going to be a shootout. Bang, bang. They're not going to go quietly into the night. Tim Walz is a complete idiot. So obviously there's people around him who are in charge of everything. The actual bosses that you've never seen. We don't even know their names. You think they're going to just let their leader get taken away in handcuffs? But we have to be willing to take that risk. But I don't know how many states we're going to have to do this because the corruption is deep in all these states. That's how certain people stay in power. These Democrat states, they're not really supermajority Democrat states. They do fraud out in the open and there's nobody to enforce laws against them. Because like they always say, who's going to police the police? You're going to just send the feds to all 50 states and take them. It's too much micromanaging. That's why so much of this stuff gets allowed to go through. And again, this is 7 years ago and nothing's changed at all. Unbelievable.
Payments happen to be on government assistance in this country. How could they possibly come up with such big bucks to transfer back home?
We had sources that told us it's all about it's welfare.
Hey, I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuning in, by the way. I'm Rico Limbaugh. This is the Single Boyfriend or Right Wing Rico. It depends on which channel you're watching on. Thank you for tuning in from the Philippines. You guys can always let me know where you're at. I really do appreciate you guys being here. This is important. What happens to the United States happens to the rest of the world. So we all need to be involved. We all need to be watching. And again, this is information that we just did not know. But if we're going to make America great again, it's going to start with enforcing the laws that are already on the books. You can ask this person who's in the Philippines, if I go to the Philippines right now with no identification, they're not going to let me in their country. If I can't pass through customs, or if I try to run through and break in and sneak through customs, I'm gonna be arrested, and there will be penalties. If I stay there, if I overstay my visa, I will be arrested. Every other country is allowed to enforce immigration laws, but here in the United States, you're being told that that's racist to do so. It's all manipulation. It's all scam. It's all fraud. Everything is just fake and gay. So keep that in mind. But yes, sir, Rico, love to see it. Hey, how you doing? I appreciate you guys tuning in. I mean, I have a couple other videos, but this is amazing. They're able to just fly out with $1 million in a suitcase, and then they stop and they talk to the officials, and then they're allowed to pass through. Because again, when you got to think about it, Al-Shabaab is not just a terror organization. It's a business too. It's an NGO. So when you're needing more Somalians to be sent to different American states so that they can provide more congressional seats, so that they can provide more illegal votes for a certain politician, you have to pay them. The way you pay them is you fund it with fraudulent scams in the United States. And then the money is laundered. This how they're laundering the money overseas. And what they do is they set up offices and they recruit families from different countries all over the world. China, the Philippines as well, Colombia, India. When you talk to these people, they were recruited to come here. They didn't just wake up one day, yawn, and say, you know what? Get the kids together. We're going to the other side of the world. That's not how it happened. They were literally brought in. They went through training. They were told exactly what to do. And that as soon as you arrive, you're going to meet up with this person. Once you get across the border, they're going to put you here where you're going to live. They're going to give you this card. You're going to be paid this much money to live here per month. And you're told explicitly who you have to vote for. And just your presence there alone already increases the congressional seats for that district. This whole thing is a scam. People don't understand that this is all fake. This is not think about it. For every illegal person that's voting based on what their leaders from the NGO that recruited them tell them to do, that neutralizes one American vote. So your vote, you lose your right to vote for every illegal that comes over here and illegally votes. And again, we learned in 2020 is that there is no auditing. Even if you found out that 99% of the votes were fake for one person, so that's why they won. If you find that out 2-3 months later, they're not going to, who's going to go and say, hey, the president has to step down. This other person is actually the president who won. Oh, really? Who's going to make me? You and what army? Which is the golden question, which means, there is nobody that's going to do that. So illegal votes are legal. It's not going to, even if it's fake, even if it's fraud, they're not going to reverse the election results. We learned that in 2020, which is why this is so dangerous, which is why we literally have to put a stop to this. I'm living here in Cebu, very affordable. I like to see that. I need more information on that. Cebu, that's in the Philippines. I'm going to look it up. I actually have a couple of friends who are in the Philippines. They love it. They just got married. Friends of mine that were in the United States for 30-something years of their lives, never married. They're in the Philippines for 7 months, already married. So I'm like, maybe the Philippines is the answer.
Fraud. It's all about the daycare.
To better understand the connection between daycare fraud and the surge in carry-on cash, you have to look at the history of this crime. 5 years ago, the Fox 9 investigators were first to report that daycare fraud was on the rise here in Minnesota.
So wait, if this is from 7 years ago, 2018, so 5 years before that will put us at 2013. They were all, so these, do you know how much money this is? Do you know, that means that they survived the fraud investigations and they were able to continue. Do you know how much money they racked in these cities and sent back to Somalia? And all they had to do was just, whoever they tell you to put in power, you put in power. This is a very intricate, I'll be honest, I don't think the mob was this efficient. The Somalian mob, the Somalian mafia is more efficient than the Italians were. Well, I don't know. The Italians built casinos. We don't know what the Somalians are building. So maybe I'm a little ambitious when it comes to that part. But they're definitely up there with being extremely organized and intricate.
Exposed how some businesses were gaming the system to steal millions in government subsidies meant to help low-income families with their childcare expenses.
It's a great way to make some money. I think it's kind of that informal word of mouth.
In order for the scheme to work, the daycare centers need to sign up low-income families that qualify for childcare assistance funding. These surveillance videos are from a case prosecuted by Hennepin County. They show parents checking their kids into a center only to leave with them a few minutes later. Sometimes no children would show up. But either way, the center would bill the state for a full day of childcare. This video from that same case shows a man handing out envelopes of what are believed to be kickback payments to parents who are in on the fraud. Where was the money going?
I don't know.
And again, I'm from an immigrant community. The way we work is that we all stick together because English is not our first language. So we speak to each other in our own language. We have our own community. We are not going to snitch on each other. There's not going to be a whistleblower from our community because we have enforcers within our community that work for the people that helped us get here. Does that make sense? The people that helped you get to the United States, they have their own way of enforcing their own rules upon you once you get here. And there are consequences for those who don't pay the money that they owe, or they're caught talking, or they're dealing. Why do you think they never integrate with us? You don't see, these are Somalians, right? And there's tons of American blacks in Minnesota. You don't ever see any American blacks mingling with them, talking to them, befriending them, getting to know them, or even going to school with them. American blacks don't go to any of these daycares. None of their fraudulent learning. So you don't see, they're not saying, oh, let's put the American blacks on with our scam. That's not how it works. They bring their own people because their own people know if we mess up, we're dead. What do they tell you about the coyotes that are bringing people across the border? They literally, and they have very strict rules. The Chinese have their own Chinese enforcers. Indians have their own Indian enforcers that literally live here in the country, and they monitor their people that are here. They're their own outside security force. The option of being a whistleblower or talking or snitching or turn, that's not even an option. It's not a thing. It can't be a thing because for them, we're the enemy and we're the target. So they're trying to get money and take our resources. We are not on the same team. They're not with us. They're against us. They're all against us. That's why we say America first, because that means Americans first, but also it means Americans only.
Exactly where it went. But it adds up when you begin to look at how many people are involved.
One recent federal case points to at least some of the money going overseas.
Of the United States.
This is video of Fozia Ali being sworn in as a member of the City of Hopkins Park Board. As she was taking her oath of office, she was also under investigation for wire fraud and theft of public money. State and federal agents had already raided Ali's daycare center in South Minneapolis. The business was suspected of billing the government for over $1 million worth of bogus child care services.
We found records that indicated that she was collecting a significant amount of money for a much larger number of children than were actually attending the center.
Did any of the money go overseas?
We are aware that some of the funds went overseas, which she was cashing out money from the business.
Do you have any idea what it was going for?
I can't say.
And this, again, these are not Americans. For one thing, you don't really know who these people are. They make up fake names. when they come across the border. That's why when they were coming over during Biden, you would find tens of thousands of IDs and passports from these other countries, and they would ditch them at the border. You come over here, you can come up with a brand new identity. That's another reason why it's really hard to know who to arrest and who to target, because they can just say, no, my name is this. There's no birth certificate. There's no fingerprints on file for these people. You don't know who they are. They're just living here, doing whatever they want. And again, these communities are very tight knit. So there's a no snitching policy or you will be killed. They have no problem knocking their own people off. They are in complete control. That's why they all move as a unit. There's no breaks in the rant, and there's no breaks in the ranks. They're not. No one's branching off, or they're doing their own thing. Also, they make it a point for certain people not to even bother learning English. That way, when you're interrogator, if you ever get in trouble, you can just, I don't know, I'm just here, and I can't give you any information. I don't speak English. You don't speak my language. And it makes it easier to kind of cover up what's been going on. It's a beautifully ran scam. I mean, this is extremely brilliant, but it's common. And we only have Trump. We need Trump. We need Hegseth. We need more people. We need more task force, and we need task force assigned to each state with complete federal authority over law enforcement. We need to be able to go in. We only have 3 more years of Trump, and then we have these elections. And with all the fraud, you think there's a lot of fraud going on with the money laundering, with these schools and these learning centers. Imagine what's going on with these elections. So we have only a few years to literally secure our entire system. We have to do better. We have to do more, and we have to do it faster.
Can't say or don't know.
I can't say.
Investigators analyzed Ali's cell phone to track her activities.
And you're absolutely right. This is the dangers of multiculturalism. Diversity is a weakness. It's not a strength. You don't get stronger by having different types of metal. You need to be consistent and stable. And it shouldn't be the diversity shouldn't even be the goal. Consistency and basically how strong you are should be what matters. The morals of a person, not how they look. Your skin color is superficial. Your character, your personality, that's what counts. Who you are as a person. Are you a patriot? That's what we need to know. And if you're a patriot for another country, if you have dual citizenship, or if you have a dual allegiance, then you should not be in positions of power here. That's why do you think they have no problem literally just scamming the hell out of all of us? They see us as Americans. They all see it. It's not just Israel that call us Goyim. The whole world does. This is a playground where you can just go and just basically money's falling out of thin air. All you got to do is write down some fraudulent nonsense on some pieces of paper, and people will give you money. It's more difficult for Americans to do because we actually have, who we are. We have licenses, we have IDs, we have fingerprints on file. We went to school here. You know who we are. We can't just all of a sudden change our name. These immigrants, they can literally change anything about themselves. You have no clue who they are. And then they can just go to an airport in another city and take off. And how does it work? Out of sight, out of mind. You won't even know. And then they can come back and have a completely different name, shave their beard, and call themselves Abdullah something else. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because profiling is racist. So if you say, well, you look like this other guy. Oh, I look like a guy. Again, we're just not a serious country. We're not going to do what it takes to secure what's ours.
Taking a 2-month trip from Minnesota to...
Everyone in the U.S. did not come from somewhere else. A lot of us were born in the United States, so you're wrong. Absolutely wrong about that.
Dubai and then Kenya.
By that logic, everybody everywhere in the world came from somewhere else. So you don't have a point.
Staying at times in $800 a night hotel rooms. She used an app on her phone to bill the state of Minnesota for childcare services while she was out of the country. Ali pled guilty to the daycare fraud, and this March started serving time in a federal prison. She declined our request for an interview.
We believe that there's a scope of fraud out there that we need to really get our arms around and ensure that those dollars are going to the kids that really need them.
The acting commissioner for the Department of Human Services told us his agency has 10 daycares currently under active investigation for fraud. We've learned dozens more are considered suspicious. Search warrants obtained by the Fox 9 investigators show each one of the suspect centers has received several $1 million in child care assistance funds. According to public records and government sources, most are owned by Somali immigrants.
Do you have any evidence to suggest?
No, multiculturalism is a bigger problem than fascism. Just because I've asked 100 different people to define fascism, and they cannot. We can easily define what multiculturalism is, but the way you define fascism is any white man in a uniform is fascist, and fascism is when a white man in a uniform enforces the laws against you. That's what you guys. That's your definition. That's your running 2025, running into 2026 definition of fascism and fascist, which is completely incorrect. So you guys are just creating your own definitions for words that have already been on the books because you don't understand what you're saying. So again, fascism isn't a problem in the United States. We're not a fascist nation. Is the left, are Democrats fascistic because they want to silence you? They don't want you to be able to speak. They want to take away your right to vote or to have a choice. Yes. They don't want you to criticize them or ask questions. Yes, that's fascistic. But that's the active definition. Your definition is anybody who's a white straight male or in a uniform that can arrest you or enforce laws, which is a ridiculous definition, but you guys have all seemed to just agree on them. That's the agreed upon definition amongst your group. The good thing is that inferiority complex doesn't come with physical strength. So you guys don't have what it takes to push your agendas. The best you can do is cry on the internet, which you guys have been proficient with that, but it's not really, that's not going to equate to physical brute force, which is going to be required to go up against us. So yeah, there's that.
This looks like organized crime.
There's a common pattern in how a lot of these are carried out. But beyond that, not something that I would.
It would be great if Trump could be around for who knows, but unfortunately, he's only going to be able to serve until 2028, which hopefully somebody else will come in who will be as close to Trump as possible, because we're going to have to keep the pressure on. We're going to have to secure our country. And honestly, all of this is a direct result of having an open society. That is the dangers of having an open society, is that it's open to anyone, even the worst of the worst, the most evil people with the worst intentions. It's open to them as well. And there's really no way to weed everybody out. You know, there's a reason why China doesn't allow immigrants. And there's a reason Russia doesn't just let everybody in. There's a reason other countries have very strict immigration rules. Even poor countries have strict immigration rules that must be followed, or you can't have entry. Canada is going to be one of our states eventually. Extremely poor country. We subsidize their entire economy. Their entire economy is an illusion, and behind the illusion, the wizard is the American president and the American people. We subsidize everything about them, and they have stricter rules on who can come into their country than we can, even though we're the one that's more valuable. So, I mean, we have to shore things up, because right now we're wide open for the taking, which is obvious because look at everything that's being taken from us.
Directly categorized as organized crime.
Sources in the Somali community tell us it's an open secret that starting a daycare center is a license to make money. The fraud is so widespread, they say, that people buy shares of daycare businesses to get a cut of the huge public subsidies that are pouring in. Some government insiders believe this scam is costing the state at least $100 million a year, half of all child care subsidies.
Is that within the realm of possibility?
I don't think half sounds credible. I certainly think that some of the schemes that we're seeing, and certainly the ones that we've brought forward already for prosecution, involve millions of dollars. I mean, this is not a small scale that we're looking at.
You know, it's crazy. I volunteer and I do animal rescue, right? And I have a system in place where if I pay fosters in other states, that will foster dogs until we can find homes for them so they're not put to sleep in the shelter, which is my whole program with Shelter Babies Inc. Even I have what we call a regional manager. You know what my regional manager does? Every week, they will stop by whatever property. I can send a volunteer or I would have a manager in that area, and they would go by. And not only do we get pictures of the dogs every day and we'll get video, but someone goes in person and checks on them because guess what? I'm paying you per day for the dog to stay there. And a lot of people, if you're depending on if you're, especially if you're living in a flyover state, people's rents are, $700, $800. If I'm paying you $100 in a month, then this dog is more so your roommate. If I'm paying you $100 or $200, the dog's a roommate. Even I have regional managers that would stop in and check on what's going on. You mean to tell me these states don't have staff that can just every 2 weeks randomly pop up at these locations to make sure everything is in compliance? I mean, these are kids we're talking about. And you mean to tell me there's zero oversight and there's kids? There's kids that you're paying money for. And and even though years ago, we still have webcams. So you mean to tell me nobody can check in? There's no camera in the lobby where you can see kids being registered and this. What, Americans, when they have daycares, they have places where parents can log in and check. So you mean to tell me the state doesn't even have the resources where they can send somebody around just to go check on this stuff? Why does Nick Shirley have to do it? Why? Why do I have to figure this out for you? Why aren't there enough people to go and just check on these locations every day? Why do we have to send investigative journalists to do it? Where is the staff that are supposed to be in charge of this? Nobody knows.
Minnesota started aggressively going after daycare fraud in 2014. Back then, it was easier to track the flow of money. The state would pay a daycare's bill, and within hours of the money showing up in the business's bank account, funds were being wired to the United Arab Emirates.
You know what, Aiden, this is my issue with this is this. I disagree because there's only people from certain countries that come here to assimilate. Unfortunately, the world does not want to assimilate. The world wants to rob us. The only people that are coming here to assimilate are people coming from Norwegian countries, maybe the UK, or France or Germany. That's it. Scandinavian people, they'll come to the United States. They want to be Americans. Australians, I don't know. They hold on to a lot of their traditions too, and they don't really want to stay here. They go back. And I only know that because I've worked with some Australians. But those are like formerly countries that were under the Commonwealth as well, mainly countries that are white countries. They will come here and they want to be Americans. They're not coming here because they're worried about going back to Scotland, going back to Ireland, trying to build up, Austria or Poland. They're not doing that. It's the rest of the world that literally love where they're from for the most part, but they see this as a get-rich-quick scheme, and they're right. So they come here to extract. They're not coming here to, they're not coming here to assimilate. So in a perfect world, that would be the case, but you can't force them to do that. Just culturally, all cultures do not mix. Culturally, we cannot all coexist. It doesn't work. It's never worked. That's why we have separate societies. And the beauty is you can choose the society that you most, that basically appeals to you the most, and you can go there. But instead, you're coming to the United States and hoping to change it into your society instead of accepting our society. No other country would allow that. Well, in the Western world, they will, but in nowhere else in the world. You couldn't go to Saudi Arabia and say, hey, look, you guys are all about to start doing the way I do things. That's not going to happen because they're a serious country, serious, strict laws. We're not a serious country right now. Unfortunately, we haven't been for a while.
But those wire transfers stopped after a few centers were busted, which takes us back to the suitcases of cash at Minneapolis-St. Paul International. In 2015, investigators documented $14 million in carry-on cash.
$14 million was able to fly out of that airport. One airport, 14 million people were given the green light to fly to other country other countries with millions of dollars in their carry-on. But Americans do not have that option. And it seems like they're not even auditing these people. Like if you get caught with too much, if you get caught with more than 10,000 cash, you're going to get an audit here in the United States. But they were able to fly with millions because the government that is in charge of the state is in charge of their law enforcement and they make the rules. This is just it's just a complete spit in the face, total spit in the face. And we're just not a serious country. Do me a favor. Also, if you're watching this video, I appreciate you guys being here. I'm a new channel. I'm fairly new to this, but I do 4 or 5 episodes a day, sometimes more. So please, if you don't mind supporting the channel, follow me on YouTube, follow me on, Instagram. I'm all over. I'm on 8 platforms right now. So I'm trying to respond to all the comments that I can. And I do appreciate all your feedback. I mean, I'm glad that we're together worldwide. We're having these conversations because they're important. If we don't talk about them, then who will? So I'm glad that you guys are here and you guys are participating. I love getting comments from you guys and you guys stop in and say hello. And we can agree to disagree. I appreciate that. But thank you all for being here. Like the channel. And every time you like it, apparently it pushes me into the algorithm so that more people will see it, that I'm going live or that I'm doing videos. So I do appreciate the support. I've over 3,000 people now that have subscribed. Mainly, I started doing this. I really started going heavy since Charlie Kirk passed. I came to Arizona. I was hoping to meet him. And then his assassination happened before I could make my way to TP USA headquarters, which is about 15 minutes away from me. But now, after everything came out about TP USA, I would never go back to that place. That place is a synagogue of Satan, apparently, because all the scandals and all the lies. And so I'm not doing that. So I'm independent. I'm doing my own. I do my own videos. I make my own episodes. It's all just homegrown stuff. No big staff or anything. So even the donations, I saw people left super chats and they left me. They sent cash apps. I wanted to say I appreciate that. Someone sent $20. I greatly appreciate it. Daniel Reiser, thank you so much for the cash app. It's $ the single BF, like the single boyfriend, the single BF. I appreciate it. That's how I was able, actually, because of donations, that's how I was able to buy this better microphone, a mixer. And I do appreciate you guys all, tuning in and watching my videos over the days. It means a lot. Watching my shorts, because, obviously I do thousands of videos and I do a lot of shorts. And I appreciate you guys tuning in because, especially if you're living here in the United States and we're all living here together, I'm making videos for us. This is an America First channel. I'm from Los Angeles. We've lost everything. LA is gone. You don't know that if you don't live in California, but I do. LA is gone. We lost Los Angeles. We lost Portland. We lost Seattle. These places are gone now. I'm trying to help us, I'm trying to guide us so we can take them back one day. I'm here to talk to you on how to stay alive and how we can eventually bring our country, keep our country together. I grew up in the 90s, in the 2000s. I want my children to have a semblance of the privilege of growing up in the United States that I remember, that I grew up in. This new place that we have here, this is a dangerous place for kids. So we have to have these conversations and we have to try to do what we can to make America great again as individuals. Trump is not the end all, the be all to the MAGA movement. Neither is Ben Shapiro. They're Israel first. We're MAGA, America first. They're not going to just hijack our movement and take our acronym. They can just they can be MEGA, make Israel great again. But we're going to be focused here on the United States. It's America first and Americans first. But it's America only, Americans only, not Hispanics that are coming here from other countries, not Somalians, not people from all over the world. Americans only. Only Americans.
By 2016, it had mushroomed to 84 million, and then last year, 100 million. A trend all too familiar to former terrorism investigator Glenn Kern. How much confidence can you say that it's likely some of this money is going towards terrorism?
I say absolutely. Absolutely. Our sources tell us that. Good sources from the community, leaders. My personal feeling is we need a nationwide task force to clamp down on this kind of fraud.
Well, the thing is this, I don't know. I don't know what kind of terrorism they're doing in Somalia. I don't know if they're terrorizing other African nations or what, but I just know lately they've been making a lot of threats against law enforcement and investigative journalists in Minneapolis. And we did lose an American, I believe she's a senator, that voted against her own party, and she was killed in Minneapolis. So was that one of the things that the money's going towards, terrorism against people like her? I don't know. We don't know the extent of it. So also there's so this was 7 years ago. There was another video of a diplomat's office in Minneapolis. They raided this office. Take a look.
We're here on West Junior. The DPS is blocking this entrance right now. There is a lot of FBI activity. We see people in their FBI jackets walking in and out of the home. I'm just going to step aside here.
At an illegal immigrant processing center in Brockville, Illinois. On Fridays, this gets hot. Let's go straight to Garrett Tinney on the ground.
4:12 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. The streets near the government district were deserted. A sheet of winter cold hung over the city, and to the few cars passing by, the two-story brick building looked completely normal. A brass plate near the entrance displayed the official seal of the Somali Commercial Coordination Office. To the public, this was a diplomatic outpost, a place for trade agreements and cultural exchange. But federal agents watching from the shadows knew the truth. This building was not used for diplomacy. It was used for movement. For months, the FBI and DHS had tracked a pattern they could not explain. Heavy packages arrived at the rear entrance at 2 a.m., carried by trucks with no customs clearance. Lights flickered in windows long after business hours. In just 6 months, agents counted 140 secret night deliveries. Not one appeared in the official diplomatic log. At 4:13 a.m., the order was given. Execute. Unmarked tactical vehicles formed a perimeter. Agents dressed in dark gear moved to the rear service entrance. They weren't there to knock. They were there to breach a facility that had operated outside the law for too long. A breach charge detonated with a thunderous crack, blowing the heavy steel door inward. Federal agents, hands where we can see them. Inside, the scene was chaotic. A man in a tailored suit jumped from behind a mahogany desk and ran toward a stairwell, clutching a laptop. He didn't make it far. Agents tackled him halfway up the steps. The laptop was still warm, its screen displaying an active encrypted transfer. Downstairs, another room had been prepared for emergency destruction.
Yusuf Abdi Ali is an accused war criminal facing a civil trial in Virginia, alleging he's responsible for atrocities including torture and attempted murder.
Black smoke rose from a metal trash can where staff were frantically burning documents. Agents rushed in, extinguishing the flames and securing the charred files. What they found inside that office shattered the idea that this was a diplomatic mission. There were no trade agreements. There were no policy papers. Instead, agents found a hidden cabinet containing dozens of fake passports and IDs, all tied to the same network. Some belonged to men later identified as violent fugitives wanted for robbery and assault. But the real shock was the money. In a concealed safe behind a false wall, agents found stacks of cash totaling millions, separated by week and month, and on the director's desk, under a paperweight, lay a thick ledger.
The money that they're able to extract goes into the pockets of the people you have to pay to turn a blind eye. It's a rather lucrative system, but there's so many eyes on Minnesota right now. But because of that, people in Ohio are saying, hey, you think the Somalians in Minnesota are bad? Wait till you get a load of the ones here in Cincinnati and Toledo and Akron. We have a huge network down here that's doing even more than in Minnesota. Now, in Minnesota, it's extreme. They got Ilhan Omar and her marrying her brother to get him citizenship. Now, she is married to someone else who's an American, so I'm not sure how they're going to be able to get her out of here. I don't know if her previous crime of her marrying her own brother will be able to supersede her being married currently to someone, but I guess we'll see. She's enriched herself. She's worth more than $30 million in less than 6 years. And nobody knows how. I mean, these politicians are just making money hand over fist, and they come in with a negative net worth. They don't have businesses. They don't do anything, or they come up with a a firm, and then there's all these new clients injecting all this money, but what are they getting in return? You know, when Biden was in office, there was a lot of quid pro quo, but we didn't, the investigations were there, but we never found out what they were getting in return. We found out they paid Hunter, they paid him millions, these, you know, the mayor of Russia, these people in the Ukraine, but what were they getting? We still have to figure that out. The public doesn't know. I know that, you know, more so NATO wanted to see how hard Russia could punch. We were able to pay off all their officials to get them to provoke a war in the Ukraine so we can just see how strong the Russian military was. And if they're going to use their exotic weapons, they've used one, but we don't know what else they have. All those people died just so that we can see, so we can just test Russia's, you know, strength to see, because we've never seen them involved with anything. They invaded the country of Georgia years ago, but we never actually seen them in battle. And they're still not even at full war. They never declared war on the Ukraine. It's a special military operation. But it's just that when you see what money can do, you can pay off all the officials in a country where they basically just turn over their soldiers and just send them out there to be test dummies to see how strong another country's weapons are. They bought those men's lives by paying off those Ukrainian politicians. Hundreds of billions sent to the Ukraine, laundered to those officials. And all we got for it was to see how hard the Russians can punch. So they can do the same with money here. The corruption is the same. City officials, everything else in the United States, everybody has bills. Everybody needs money. So corruption is something that is a big rampant problem. And now we're just finding out how much of it is going on. I'm just wondering, do we even have enough agents in the FBI to do anything about this? How many FBI agents are being paid? How many police are being paid? Who else received money? I mean, it's just a tangled web. And these Somalians, they seem pretty confident that nothing's going to happen. I guess we'll find out. Like and subscribe, share the video. I'll be back on live in about 20 minutes. Oh, you said, what are your thoughts on our foreign policy? To be honest with you, I have mixed thoughts. I see some things as necessary, some things as not, it's unnecessary. People want us to be the world police because we're number one in the world, but now we're not living in a unipolar world. We're in a tripolar world where there's going to be three superpowers: China, Russia, United States. We are only going to be able to focus on our hemisphere. North, Central, South America belongs to us. The rest of the world is on its own. We're going to have treaties with about 4 European nations. That's it. The Australians are going to have to capitulate to the Chinese. Taiwan will go back to China. The Ukraine belongs to Russia, and the Eastern European bloc, which was being supported by the United States. You got to think about it. What is Estonia? What's the GDP of Estonia? What do they make? What about Latvia? What about any of these Eastern European bloc countries? The truth is they only exist because the United States is using USAID money to fund them and their governments so that we can store our weapons there for an eventual invasion of Russia. After they demonstrated their weapon called the Oreshnik, those ambitions are over. We don't want smoke. We don't want any problems with the Federation after what we saw them do in the Ukraine. Therefore, we are now pulling funding from those countries. They will fold. They can't afford to stay open because they don't have any exports. They don't have any customers. So they're going to have to beg the Russian Federation to bring them back a part of their bloc. The Europeans, they're going to try to provoke a war by February with the Russians that we're going to stay out of. They will eventually capitulate as well. It's not like the Russians want to invade those countries because they're poor and they're full of ethnics, and the Russian Federation does not need to import those issues with them. So they'll be better off just cutting them off. Hopefully we can avoid them starting a war, but that is their goal. So I think that as far as our foreign policy is concerned, we should be focused on our hemisphere. Top to bottom, only our hemisphere. That's it. So do me a favor. I hope that answers your question. Like and subscribe, share the video, hit the Cash App. You can buy me a coffee from Starbucks. I appreciate everything. I'll see you guys. I'll be back in about 20 minutes. We'll get something to drink and get some more water, and then I'll be back on. So remember, America first, America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.